Okay, I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Calaveras County Planning Commission of July 25th, 2019 to order, and we will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any agenda changes?
No, we don't. I just want to make sure that everyone got the revised agenda that showed item number 1 being on the regular agenda, not the consent.
Thank you. And this is time for general public comment on any land use item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission and is not posted on the consent or regular agenda. Those items may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the commission from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the commission. 5 minutes per person, 15 minutes per topic. Is there anybody who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by the commission at one time without discussion. Any commission member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for discussion. Is anybody?
We have no items.
Don't we have minutes from the last meeting?
Not yet.
Not
They'll
yet.
be coming
Okay,
next meeting.
Great. All righty then. Let's go ahead and move on to our first regular agenda item. A request by Commissioner Henderson to reconsider item 3 on the July 11, 2019 agenda, 2019-10 zoning amendment for Paloma Farm LLC.
So as you recall, this was an item, there were only 3 members last meeting. The item failed on a 2-to-1 vote to forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, resulting effectively in a denial of the zoning request. Our provisions, the procedures allow for reconsideration by a member voting in the majority or any member that was absent. There's 2 ways to interpret the majority. One, the majority necessary to forward a recommendation, or the majority who voted in favor of the item. And in this case, Commissioner Henderson had voted in favor of the item. To reconsider, an action would be taken today to direct us to place it on a subsequent agenda, which would probably be the next available meeting, the first meeting of August. Second meeting, because we would need time to renotice it.
Do we have public comment?
Yes.
Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak to this item?
Good morning. Colleen Platt with MyValleySprings.com. We support the motion for reconsideration by Commissioner Henderson. As the planning director pointed out, only 3 commissioners were present at the last meeting, and the applicant was not informed of his right to ask for a continuance until after the vote, and we feel that didn't give him a fair hearing, so we'd like to ask you to please reconsider and give the applicant a chance at a fair hearing. Thank you.
Is the applicant here?
I am.
Would you like to speak for a minute?
I would. Good morning, Commission. Laz Delgado, District 1. I live in Valley Springs. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Commissioner Henderson for bringing up this reconsideration. And today I'd simply like to ask this Commission to vote in favor of the reconsideration, simply because it will give you guys an opportunity to first-handedly receive the presentation from the Planning Department and vote accordingly. So I'd just like to thank you, Commissioners and staff.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commission. As you may recall, Mr. Fiorino, I requested that you not receive the appointment to this position for the very reason that you have a conflict of interest between your ideologies and morals and religion and making land use decisions based on the merits of the application. And I would request that you please recuse yourself from applications that might have anything to do with commercial cannabis cultivation, because at the applicant's previous hearing, the only thing you had to say and why you were going to vote against him and cast the deciding vote in the absence of a full commission
Tom,
was that you believed
Let me interrupt you.
Sure.
So we're not talking about the actual decision here. We're only talking about getting this item back on the agenda. That's what we're going to vote on. So if you could kind of focus on that
I will
right
pull
now.
that into
Thanks.
that. That was part of my point is, and I'll stop after this, is that this whole hearing, this request wouldn't be necessary if that were done. If a person with a clear bias recused themselves. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'd like to speak to that. I will
Just
not be
one moment.
recusing
We're going to
myself.
finish with the public comments, and then you'll be able to speak. So we're going to close the public comments, and commissioners?
Yeah, I will not be recusing myself on this issue. It has nothing to do with religion, and it has to do just with, I think, that we need to preserve as many rural residential lots as possible, and so I will not be recusing myself on this issue.
I'd like to point out that I was the acting chair last week, and until I got here, I didn't realize there were only going to be 3 commissioners present. Had I known that in advance, I probably would have reviewed the procedures, which has within it a continuance as of right if there are only 3 members of the commission present. So I apologize for not making that clear before we had the vote, and that was unfortunate. I am in favor of the reconsideration.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I think that the commission should reconsider this. The Planning Commission procedures are clear that the applicant is entitled to a continuance if requested as of right. But apparently he was not aware of that. And it is also clear that if there are only 3 commissioners present, then it takes a vote of all 3 to approve the item, but I think it's fair to say that the applicant probably wasn't aware of that either. And so under the circumstances, I just think it would be fair to reconsider this matter.
Yeah, I would also be in favor of reconsidering for the same reason. I think the applicant should have been told that with 3 commissioners, he needed.
Would somebody like to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to reconsider this.
A
I'll second.
Got that? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you. So the date for that was in August?
Tentatively scheduled for the second meeting of August. We will renotice it as we would a new public hearing.
Thank you. All right, item 2, 2019-023 Agriculture Preserve in Williams Map, contract number 364, and zoning amendment for Ronald, oh my gosh, Franziska Shabra. I hope I didn't mangle that. Who would like to speak?
That's funny, because we've been having problems with poor Roland's name. I've been referring to him as Ronald, so I've apologized in advance for any mess-ups that we have from here on out. Okay, so moving on. So we received an application for California Land Conservation Contract and zoning amendment for Roland and Franziska Shabrom. Thank you. proposing to establish an agricultural preserve for a total of 281.11 acres of land. The land is currently addressed at 3206 Gillum Road, which is located southeast of Paloma Road near Valley Springs. In 2009, the Chaperones established Ag Preserve Contract Number 309 for a total of 199.07 acres. In 2018, they've purchased 2 parcels of land that are contiguous to their existing preserve. Adding those 2 parcels is the purpose of the application before us today, and that land totals 82.04 acres. Currently, their operation consists of 50 head of beef cattle. Previous years, the Chaperones have reported a gross annual income from production of $8,000, far exceeding the minimum $2,000 requirement to be eligible for the Williamson Act. Reportedly, the land has been in agriculture since at least 1971, when John Fisher originally established an agriculture preserve contract number 44. Because part of the land is currently in the Williamson Act, 2 of the parcels are currently zoned AP, Agriculture Preserve. However, the other 2 parcels are currently zoned RR, Rural Residential, and RA, Residential Agriculture. Pursuant to county resolution, we need to rezone those 2 parcels zoned RR and RA, AP for agriculture preserve, signifying the agriculture preserve pursuant to the Williamson Act. The parcels are designated in the county general plan as natural resource lands, currently agriculture production, with a high capability of sustaining agriculture. Although we've repeated this several times, we don't need to necessarily make findings of consistency with the general plan update, but knowing that we're almost to the end of the process, it's important obviously to understand the direction that we are taking pursuant to the adoption of the general plan update. And right now this land is designated to be or slated to be designated resource production, and the Agriculture Preserve and Williamson Act are consistent in that land use designation. The parcels are located in a moderate to high fire hazard area of the county. Managing the land for optimum grazing pastures will decrease the fuels and reduce the fire hazard. In addition, putting land in the agriculture preserve will decrease development potential, which will then minimize the exposure of people and structures to the risk of wildfire. These parcels are located in the designated critical habitat area for the California red-legged frog. Maintaining open space and limited residential development will help to preserve the wildlife habitat. There are 2 waterways that currently traverse the property. We've got Young's Creek and a tributary to Cosgrove Creek as the seasonal water sources for the livestock operation. In addition, primarily the property is located in an area that is known for its moderate to high groundwater potential, and there are currently 4 wells on the property. This project or application was considered by our county-appointed Agriculture Advisory Committee, and they did vote 5-0, making a recommendation to establish the contract. So in conclusion, the land and the production meet the minimum standards for the agriculture preserve pursuant to the Williamson Act. The application is consistent with the general plan. There are no current conflicts with the general plan update. Maintaining the land in agriculture will reduce the fire hazard. Open space is beneficial for maintaining the wildlife habitat. There is adequate water supply to sustain both the agricultural and the residential development on the property. And in addition, the application itself is supported by our agricultural commissioner, in addition to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. Pursuant to CEQA guidelines, this project is exempt and a notice of exemption has been prepared. Therefore, our recommendation is that we disestablish contract 309 for the purpose of establishing contract 364 while rezoning the two parcels to agriculture preserve pursuant to Board of Supervisors Resolution 75489, which was adopted for the establishing uniform rules for the administration of agricultural preserves in Calaveras County. Any questions?
I'm going to skip ahead by about 3 steps. On Exhibit A to the resolution, I think we've got some fine tuning that needs to be involved.
Yes.
The portion of parcel ending with 085 that is to the bottom right isn't in yellow. It should be.
So this map is the zoning attachment, so it's
Okay.
the zoning exhibit. So it's not illustrating the entire ag preserve, it's only illustrating the portion of land to be rezoned.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then your caption up above about the zoning amendment and pointing to a part of the parcel 085 should really be pointing to the parcels that are being changed, right? Your little balloon up there. That, what it's pointing to is not being rezoned, as I understand it.
Yes,
It should be. Did I illustrate, are you saying I illustrated that incorrectly? I
Yeah,
can't,
I mean-
unfortunately, the print is too small on my map, I can't
Right.
read it. So,
I know, it helps to go back to the
Let me go to
the
my
staff
other-
report, you can see
okay.
numbers.
So let's see, what did I say needed to
So
happen
the
here?
resolution, it says that you're changing the zoning for 028 and 086.
028.
That's part of 086.
That's a part of 086.
This is all.
It looks like it's split by Gillum
Yes.
Road, but
I
that,
thought that was a
maps
part
are-
of 085.
Confusing.
No,
no.
086 is, so it goes, 028 is the parcel down, if you refer to on the staff report,
Yeah,
the first map on the staff report,
Right.
the big one that we can all read.
yeah,
Okay, so 28, adjacent to that is 86. 86
See, there's no
is
numbers.
jogs up to the north, all the way up to the very top and back
Okay.
down.
Here.
okay. Okay, yeah, I thought that was...
It's
I
a
thought that
little
was
hard to
085.
see
Yeah.
all the
Confusing to me too
lines
at
and
first.
where the property boundaries actually lie. But if
Well-
you go to identify that on the GIS, it identifies that whole entire piece.
Well, outstanding. I'm chastened, and I will just withdraw.
Bigger writing,
know.
everything.
Commissioner Fiorina squared me away.
Well, I was confused too, until I looked at this one. This one made this one clear.
Are there any further questions for Gina? Would the applicant like to speak?
First of all, thank you very much for hearing our application. What I want to say is we have a 700-acre ranch out there, and cattle ranching is not a business you make money in. We do it just to preserve the land because it's so beautiful, but there's a lot of threat to that land. And every little piece helps to maintain that land. And even people don't think it's a big deal to bring it from that tax break to another. For us it is, and it will secure that land for the future to come. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item?
Yes, briefly, I'll keep it short. Colleen with myvalleysprings.com. We visited this ranch some years ago. The owners were kind enough to give us a tour, and they are excellent stewards of the land. It's also a historical property, and it's been in cattle ranching for over 50 years. We'll preserve the open space, good economics for the county. Just it's 100% support for this project. Thank you.
Commission, Laz Delgado, District 1. I live in Valley Springs. This family happens to be neighbors of mine. I didn't know that this item was on the list today, but I've ridden horses through their property with their permission, and they do run a really nice cattle operation, and I am in favor of this also.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Then we will close the public comment portion of this and bring it back to the commissioners. Does anybody have any questions or want to make any comments?
First, I want to commend you for your Exhibit A to the resolution.
Except for the fact that none of us can read it because it's too small. Yeah.
Small print.
Pass out, Will.
No, I think it's in order. I had a couple typos on the resolution, but Gina has them.
I think there's one other couple changes, maybe you've already, but it says Ronald, both in the header and as far as the first row, whereas that needs
Yeah,
to be
we've
corrected.
already
Roland.
established that
Okay.
error, and I've already gone ahead and changed everything that has been made, drafted ahead of time, such as the contract, which is obviously the big one. Yeah, most important.
Any other comments? And should we hear the corrections, suggestions on the resolution, or do you already have them, Gina?
I already have them.
Okay.
There were two. One was just adding an S on the word acres or acre, and the other was just the inclusion of the words which rather makes the sentence read better. Up in evidence under number 1 finding.
Are we ready to hear the resolution?
Staff recommends the Planning Commission pass a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-013, recommending the Board of Supervisors approve application 2019-023, establishing Agriculture Preserve number 364, while simultaneously disestablishing Agriculture Preserve Contract 309, and to adopt an ordinance amending the zoning of Assessor Parcel number 040-001-028 from rural residential and Assessor Parcel number 040-001-086 from residential agriculture to agriculture preserve based on the findings included therein, as amended.
Do we have a motion?
I move we pass the resolution as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Who made the second?
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And we will move on to item 3 on the agenda, 2005-125, extension of time for Sherry Shively. And Madeline is here to guide us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Madeline Flandreau, Planner 2. Just get my stuff here. I am presenting the extension of time. It's a 2-year extension of time from Sherry Shively to extend the expiration date of approved tentative parcel map 2005-125. The subject property, APN 048-018-030, is 80 acres and is located at 5816 Highway 12 in Wallace. The map was approved by the board on May 1st, 2007 to divide the 80-acre parcel into 4 parcels at 5 acres minimum each with a remainder of 60 acres. The initial approval in 2007 was for 36 months to complete the conditions of approval necessary to record the map. In addition to the initial 36 months, the map qualified for 7 years of automatic extensions granted through the state through several Senate and Assembly bills. Thus, the map was set to expire May 1st, 2017. Nearing expiration, all the conditions necessary to record the map weren't completed. So the applicant filed a request for a discretionary extension of time to extend the expiration of the map for an additional 3 years. The extension request went to public hearing on June 8th, 2017, during which the commission granted a 2-year extension, which made the new expiration May 1st, 2019. So on April 26, 2019, Sherry Shively submitted a request to extend the expiration date for an additional 2 years. Calaveras County Code, Section 1608040 establishes the provisions for the extension of an approved tentative parcel map. Under this section, the map may be extended by the commission for a period or periods not exceeding a total of 5 years. So granting a 2-year extension would total 4 years of extensions by the commission. County Code Section 1608040A, it does not expressly require that the Planning Commission make any specific findings in order to approve a discretionary extension for a parcel map. But the county has consistently applied this standard, the standard from 1608040B for tentative subdivision maps, for subdivision map extensions, when considering requests for discretionary extensions of parcel maps in order to remain consistent. The standard for an extension under that code section requires a demonstration of good faith effort to support an approval of extension. The conditions of approval for tentative parcel map 2005-125 are set forth in the Board of Supervisors resolution number 07-068, which is attached to the packet. Among these are compliance with all the mitigation measures, improvement of the roadways, a Caltrans encroachment permit, and demonstrations that each parcel has adequate water supply and is able to meet the requirements for on-site waste disposal systems. The applicant has drilled a well on each of the 4 parcels, completed preliminary soils work, and hired engineers to design septic, on-site road systems, and the encroachment. The applicant has been working with Robin Peters with Cal State Engineering on a boundary line issue that was discovered during the preparation of the map. Cal State determined that the parcel was not entirely monumented, and the easterly boundary was incorrectly located, placing an existing driveway that serves the neighbor to the north is outside of the easement within which it was intended. The applicant attempted to correct this order by adjusting the boundary line. However, an accord was not able to be reached with the neighbor. Therefore, the easement and the driveway matter is being left unresolved. The environmental review and initial study and mitigated negative deck was prepared for the original approval of the tentative parcel map that was adopted by the board on May 1st, 2007. Although the applicant has this unresolved boundary line issue, the project hasn't changed, and those circumstances wouldn't cause the county to prepare additional environmental review. Therefore, the mitigated negative declaration is still adequate. This extension of time request has been routed to all responsible agencies, and none had any objections or concerns. So in conclusion, while there's no specific finding required to be made by the commission in order to grant an extension of time for tentative parcel map 2005-125, it's apparent that the applicant has demonstrated a good faith effort to meet the conditions of the map. Though the applicant previously received a 2-year extension, unforeseen circumstances regarding the legal boundary lines has significantly delayed the applicant's ability to complete the remaining conditions of the tentative parcel map and record the map. And that's my presentation.
Are there any questions for Madeline?
Not for me.
Well, I have one. You said the boundary issue has been left unresolved. The letter from Ms. Shively seems to say it has been resolved, and my only question is, which is right?
No, I was not updated on the resolution of this, so maybe the applicant and their agent can explain further.
Right, so would the applicant's agent like to speak?
Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Robin Peters. I'm with Cal State Engineering. As indicated by the staff report, as we were ramping up towards submittal of a map for map check, we discovered a nasty boundary issue on the east side of this property. That is resolved at this point, but that doesn't indicate that we resolved it to the satisfaction of all parties. We simply came to the point where we could not resolve it so that everyone was happy, which was what we've been working on for about the last year. We did find that the driveway serving a neighbor that was supposed to be in an easement on the Shively property is in fact not within the easement on the Shively property. So our goal was to adjust the boundary to where everybody believed it was all along. That proved to be a difficult, more difficult exercise than we anticipated. The idea was to move the property boundary over, establish a new easement to incorporate that corridor which encompasses the driveway. That didn't happen and hasn't happened to date. We don't have to pursue that solution. The easement will remain on the Shively property, and the driveway, it appears, will remain outside of the easement on the Shively property, and the neighbor may have to resolve that issue, him or herself. In any case, that gobbled up much of our efforts in the last year or so, and we've decided that we do have to get this map recorded and move on, and we will need a bit more time to do that, hence the request. The staff report does fairly and clearly represent the circumstances, but I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
So if I understand it, then the irresolved resolution is you have a clear path as to what you're going to do now, which was probably what you were originally going to do, but and you just need more time to get the map together now, but you don't see any further delays resulting from this disagreement.
We didn't see this delay either. Sherry's instructions to us as we were preparing the map is figure out a way to make everybody happy, which is the path we took initially. Sometimes with boundary disputes and driveways and easements, there is no way to make everybody happy. And we got to the point where we were running out of time again, and Sherry said, I've got to get this map recorded and figure out how to make the neighbors happy later, if that's what it takes. So the easement will remain in place on Sherry's property, and the neighbor has access to his property through the easement as he always has. The unfortunate reality is that the driveway that exists on the ground is not within the easement. So the neighbor may construct a new driveway to his property, and that certainly is an option for the neighbor. But we'll work that out as time goes on. In the meantime, we do need to get this map recorded because quite frankly, the Subdivision Map Act won't give us a lot more time after this. So.
But my question is, right now you have a clear path to what you're going to do to record the map.
Oh, yes. Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
You just need a little more time.
That's correct.
Any additional questions for Mr.
No.
Peters?
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to say anything? Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to this item? None, we'll close the public comments. Any further discussion by the commission?
I think it's fine.
Are we ready to hear the resolution?
Yep.
Okay. Staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2019-022, approving a 2-year extension of time for approved tentative parcel map 2005-125 for Sherry Shively based on the findings contained therein.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution is approved 5-0. Get back to work, Robin. Okay, item 4. The 2019 housing element of the general plan update. I believe our planning director is going to lead this discussion.
If I could ask Annette to make available the handouts that I brought in.
Good morning, Peter Maurer, Planning Director. First, a question. Would it be helpful if I bring up the draft of the element, or having the paper copies in front of us, is that sufficient for the work we need to do?
It might be helpful to have it up there. We have some I have some housekeeping suggestions.
Let's warm it up. I'll just sort of go through the preliminary review. So the housing element is one of the mandated elements of a general plan. It is probably the most regulated part of a plan from the state's perspective. It's the only element that requires approval by a state agency, in this case the Department of Housing and Community Development. There is probably 3 times as much legislation, state law addressing housing issues as there is all of the rest of the general plan. And so the process of adopting a general plan is, that just goes away. Yeah. It's somewhat convoluted. It is also required to be updated on a regular basis, and if we do not have a certified housing element updated in the time frame established by state law, the county is subject to loss of funding for a number of programs that the state provides, particularly in housing areas, but also could be linked to transportation funding and other issues. We have gone from a 5-year cycle, what it's called, to an 8-year cycle, starting with this next update, which is helpful because the process of updating a housing element is sort of onerous and just very time consuming. The purpose of the housing element is, to narrow it down to a real key issue, is to ensure that local jurisdictions are providing a range of housing opportunities in its jurisdiction to meet the population that exists. And each year, the state issues what's called, or each cycle, the state Housing Community Development Department, through the Department of Finances, issues what's called the RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. And that is issued to the in many cases, there are the, like the Council of Governments, we have Calaveras COG, which includes the city and the county. In other areas, such as the Bay Area or Sacramento, they're much larger areas that could include multiple counties and many cities. Fortunately for us, it's a small regional planning agency, the CalCog, and so the distribution of housing is between us and the city. And that's the target number that we are supposed to be trying to hit. Right now, the code does not require that we actually construct the housing, because the county is not in the business of actually building housing, but we provide the opportunity for a range of housing types. And we try to track how we do. So every year we provide a report to the state that shows how many houses are built, or how many residential units are constructed, or how do we meet some of the other housing needs that we look at, and to try to meet the needs of all sectors, economic sectors of the population. What we have typically done is we're required to review the past housing element policies and objectives, look at how we've done, where can we improve, what has changed in the community since the last housing element update, that then looks at what do we need to do? Do we need to change policies? Do we need to change some of the goals that we've set for ourselves? This cycle, there are a number of new state laws that we've had to address. We've worked with the consulting firm Placeworks to prepare this update. So if you go back through the document, there's a lot of text, a lot of explanation. Much of that is the same as been in the housing element, basically going in 2010. We updated in 2015, and now we are updating that again. All of the data, the tables, that's all recent information, but much of the text is the same that it's been previously. I provided for you a copy of an underlying strikeout version of the goals and policies and implementation programs, but I did not do that for the entire document, only because the changes in tables makes it so complex that it makes it unreadable. And hopefully, that didn't cause a problem for you in reviewing this document. The critical issue, the key part of this is the goals and policies. The information is all important. It helps sets the background for why the goals and policies are in the element. But the goals and policies is what we look at for each year, analyzing how we're doing, what programs are we trying to pursue. We work very closely with the Health and Human Services Agency. A number of these programs are actually implemented by them, and that agency and I have a really good working relationship. This is the one element that also requires established timeframes of when we hope to get these things done. Now, we have dates that we need, and we don't always meet it, and that's somewhat expected. But at the same time, we have to make a concerted effort to try to meet some of these things. Now, for whatever reason, if we don't get to a program or a measure, doesn't mean we're purposely blowing it off. It's just that we have a lot of different priorities. We try to do the best we can with the limited resources that we have. And so you see in the edits to the programs that we've crossed out, this will be done in 2018, and say, well, we'll try to get to it in 2020. It's not trying to be just disingenuous that we'll just keep putting it off. It's just that, see, we'd hope to get this done. We didn't have the resources to do it. We realize it's important. We still do intend to do it. And I think that the state keeps pushing against local government more and more to have more leverage that these things actually get accomplished. There's legislation going through right now that actually potentially can mandate that the units be constructed, not just have the opportunity constructed. I have no idea how that's going to be accomplished, but that's something that the state legislature is looking at right now. So with that, there are a few corrections that I wanted to note. I think that Chair Laddish has a few items as well as I think Commissioner Wooster. But if you turn to page 62 in the housing element document. At the very bottom of the page, a portion of that sentence, the last sentence didn't make any sense, and we realized that there was an editing issue there. That should read, the last two sentences. Did everyone find where I'm saying right now? After GIS in parentheses, it should just read, a complete inventory of all vacant residential land within unincorporated Calaveras County was not conducted. Only vacant land allowing for higher density residential development was included in the inventory as shown in Appendix C. On page 65, table 4-41 references table 4-40. Vacant site capacity, see table 4-40. 4-40 doesn't exist. And we will be renumbering all of the tables from 39 on so that we don't have that gap. But the reference is actually to Appendix C, not to table 4-40. I provide a list of, the sort of significant changes that were made based primarily on where we're at today compared to 2015 and the changes in state law. I don't intend to go through all of those. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at the changes. At this point in time, I'll just turn it back over to the commission if you have any questions of me or suggested edits. You may want to hold those off until we have public comment.
Yeah, I have some questions. On page 26 indicates that in unincorporated Calaveras County, 39.0% of the units, housing units, are vacant. And that's striking to me, and I wondered if this included all short-term rentals, or if they're considered as vacant.
I believe so, yes, I think that's true.
It's explained somewhere in here, because
Is
I
it?
had the same
I missed
question.
it.
And it is explained that it includes things that are long-term rentals that are between homes that are for sale and part-time homeowners and vacation rentals.
Do we have in here somewhere just what the figure, as we understand it now, is for short-term vacation rentals? How many units that consists?
Well, and that figure includes actually vacant homes that are for sale, or vacant rental units that are unoccupied, part-time residents, so the people that come up once every couple of months for a vacation home but it's not rented out, as well as short-term vacation rentals. We do not have that number broken down, but it's something that we're working on. We've actually just entered into a contract with a corporation that tracks short-term vacation rentals, and so we'll have in the near future a much better idea of that. I think it's something that is becoming more of an issue in a lot of communities, but also here in Calaveras County, that the availability of housing for residents is diminished by conversion to short-term vacation rentals. So that's something we'll be looking at in the future.
Perhaps when that data is included like it is here, it is confusing if we could have a little asterisk or something that says this includes blah, 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 the explanation. It is in here somewhere, but it took me a while to find it, and it was beyond where it was first cropping up, so. And I was thinking, wow, if we have that much empty inventory, why can't we get people in houses?
We don't have a shortage.
Yeah.
So we can certainly do that, and that will be helpful when the board hears this.
Thank you. So, would you guys like to go through your items, or do we want to hear from the public first?
Well, why don't we go through the items so that the public knows what we're talking about?
Kelly, you want to start?
I have a lot of items on the housing element itself. It's going to take a while, so we can do it any way you want, and I also have some on the implementation measures that won't take as long. So we can do it either way, I don't care, just so you know.
Yeah, just a heads up, I have a list too, so. Brett, do you have anything that you want to bring up now? I'm just trying to get a feel for if we should take a quick break and then get started. If we want to go ahead and hear some from the public, then come back to us, give our things, and then give the public one more opportunity in case we brought something up that they would like to speak to.
I think that would be a good way to proceed.
You guys, Tim, does that work for you?
Fine.
Okay. Is there any member of the public who would like to
Oh, I
speak
thought
to
we were
this
taking a
item?
break.
Well, let's get started and then take a break. It's
Okay.
pretty early.
Good morning again. On Commissioner Ladish's suggestions for the limited density owner builder rural housing ordinance proposal, I like your changes, thank you. And I've been wanting to mention on the fire sprinkler exclusion for where it says homes, for homes less than 1,200 square feet, number was mentioned by a lot of members of the public at the outreach workshops that were held. And at that time, all those people had only seen the Butte County version of that, which they chose 1,200 square feet because that's the same square footage as the maximum for their accessory dwelling units, which are excluded from Needham. And after that, started researching the other 10 existing ordinances in the state, which are all over the map on fire sprinklers, but like Amador and others, for instance, there is no square footage. It's just you don't have to do them. And that might not be popular with some people in county government to just eliminate the requirement. I don't know. Another angle to consider would be evaluating the egress opportunities. Like a friend of mine's house who's dealing with possibly having to put in fire sprinklers, there's no room in the house where you can be 10 feet from a door to the outside. And it seems kind of silly in that situation that you would have to have fire sprinklers to allow you time to get out of your house. So I would ask you if you'd reconsider whether the number 1,200 needs to be in there or not. And also on that section of the housing element, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it says planning would evaluate this and possibly have an ordinance together as soon as 2021. And for people in the burn scar in particular, it's already been a long time, and that's another long time. And it's kind of like living in purgatory out there. Not many people are doing much of anything. And I would ask you to consider possibly an expedited pilot program in the burn scar much sooner than that time frame. And it would give you the added benefit of being able to gather data like what percentage of people are using that Title 25 option, what, if any, problems the county government experiences with it, and stuff on a smaller scale before considering it on a county-wide basis. But that's my comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleen Platt, myvalleysprings.com. Just two programs I think I wanted to comment on. And that was one of the first ones, the same one that Mr. Griffin just spoke about. And I believe I'm kind of going in the same direction as Commissioner Ladish on a couple things. I did not like the wording specifically to exclude the fire sprinklers. I felt that was not broad enough in context to include all of the changes to the Title 25 code that narrowed it down to just fire sprinklers. And so I was going to suggest changing the wording to something like including evaluation of, various requirements, and I think you went there with your wording somewhere like that. And then also, I agree with Mr. Griffin that to hold workshops and evaluate amendments and complete amendments, you know, in the 2021 timeframe is a long time for people that need to rebuild in the burn scar now, and I was just hoping that maybe you could, you know, push that forward a little bit more so that it would happen sooner for these people. So that's that, and then the other program I had to comment on was H-2D, incentives for affordable housing. And that reads, the county shall provide fee reductions, fee waivers, deferral payments, et cetera, for developing and building on qualifying projects with an affordable housing component. And I just had a question on how that was going to happen, the shall provide. The time frame, under time frame, it says ongoing as projects are processed through the planning department, but the responsible agency is the planning department and the board of supervisors. From what I understand, the planning department doesn't have the authority itself to reduce or waive fees. So you can't just bring a project forward and decide to waive fees for it. You can't do that yourself, from what I understand. It has to go to the board of supervisors. So practically speaking, an applicant comes forward with an affordable housing project and you have to pay up front the fees that are there in place. You know, you're not allowed to waive the fees for them up front. So I didn't see how that was going to work on a project-by-project basis. It seemed like something that should go to the board to reduce fees specifically for affordable housing projects. This has been done just recently in June in Angels Camp. The city council looked at all the fees and reduced specific fees for affordable housing projects. Now, they were able to reduce water and sewer fees because they control the water and sewer fees, and we can't do that here. But you could have a conversation with the water districts on a program. The Angels Camp City Council did reduce the road fees, and the Board of Supervisors could reduce road impact fees and road mitigation fees if they chose for affordable housing projects. So I was just going to suggest you look at the actual implementation of that and consider that the planning department can't really do that, that the board has to do that. Maybe the wording could be addressed that way. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
My name is Stephen Wasick. I have two 10-acre parcels in the burn scar here in Calaveras County. And I just, this came up, I heard about this Title 25, just a few months ago. And it's not just affordable, it's realistic. I mean, to be able to build on the scar, which is a bad investment to start off with, but because we have Todd, we've been out there for 40 years. And my sons, they don't want us to get rid of the land in that. So, like I say, it's more realistic for us. What's happening now out there in a lot of the scar is I don't see no building happening. There are some, whatever you want to call them, derelicts that are squatting in areas. I've had 4 neighbors that have been robbed. I do have cameras. I got my tractor out there. I got a lot of tools so we can go out there. We can work on the land. But I'm afraid of having anything out there because we are it's not livable out there right now. I mean, they've been really patient with us with the trailer out there and all that, but that's not living. And so I just want to say it's just not affordable, but it's realistic for us. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay, now let's take a 10-minute break. Okay, is everybody ready to get started again?
Yes.
Yes. How would we like to do this? Do we want to stick to the topic that's just been discussed, mostly the Title 25 amendments for right now? I'm pretty sure everybody's going to have opinions on that. Or do we want to just start with Commissioner Wooster's comments and then kind of work through all the commissioners.
Why don't we start with Commissioner Wooster's and
Good with that?
deal with the time?
Okay, most of these are, I think, are not substantive, but trying to make the document make more sense.
Sure. So,
Okay,
page
and,
numbers.
On the implementation programs, which is 4.12, I start with H-1B, and in the first sentence, I'm having trouble making sense out of. It says, "The county shall review biannually and amend land use regulations, development standards, permitting procedures, and fees, review biannually, and where feasible to remove unnecessary impediments, etc." I think what it means, or it's supposed to mean, is
Let's see, we make sure we're all literally on the same page.
H-1B.
I took your change pages and stuck them in my housing element. And I don't know if you're working from what his change pages were.
Mine doesn't say that.
Well, I'm working off the one that came out with the memo of July 5th that had the red line goals and policies.
Well, mine has underlining. Your H-1B is where you're at.
Yeah, mine has underlining too.
Yeah, oh, good. I think, and I hadn't found my page when you were reading, so I don't know if I have the same thing you do or not.
Okay, it's H-1B, it's entitled Development Standards.
Yeah.
And it starts, "The county shall..."
amend land use
No.
regulations.
You're the unamended version.
Mine's the latest one on the website. Okay, let me go grab my amendments. They're right here.
The marked up version.
Go ahead.
Somewhere in the creation of the underlined strikeout, I must have plugged in the language in the wrong spot.
Oh,
So it might be easier, the second biannually shouldn't be there. It should read that, it should, so review biannually, permitting procedures and fees as needed, comma, and where feasible to remove impediments to and reduce the cost of affordable residential development. So I'm sorry for that.
could you read that whole?
I think that second
From the beginning.
underline just doesn't belong there. I'm not sure why it's there. It looks like when I was creating this document, I just
So
messed up.
what should that sentence read?
The county shall review biannually and amend land use regulations, development standards, permitting procedures, and fees as needed, and where feasible to remove impediments and reduce the cost of affordable residential development.
Do you need the "to" before "remove"? It doesn't seem to belong there. Shall review biannually, and where feasible, remove.
It doesn't need to be there now.
Okay. That was my first question. Okay, the next one is on 1C, H-1C, Infill Incentive Program, which has changed, reads at the beginning, "To facilitate development of infill projects, the county shall consider adopting an infill incentive ordinance," etc. So far, so good. Then, when we go to the time frame, it says, "Evaluate the need for an incentive program within 2 years and adopt an incentive program within 4 years." But the lead-in suggests that the county might not decide to adopt one, because the previous language that required that the county shall adapt got changed to the county shall consider adapting. So it seems to me that the time frame ought to read, evaluate the need for an incentive program within 2 years, and, comma, if it is determined to adopt one, comma, adopt an incentive program within 4 years.
What was it? If it is determined to be,
And if it is determined to adopt one.
Right.
Maybe it'd be most efficient if we also have comments on the same measure to
Right. We
cut
should
in at this
all
point.
add
I wonder why the change from adopt an infill incentive ordinance to consider adopting. It seems to me we're getting into the area where we aren't binding the county to anything, any action. And I'm wondering about the validity of this rather mealy-mouthed language.
well, in some way, this is similar to some of the changes we made to the rest of the general plan, where we said, well, let's look at this and see if having such an ordinance really would be appropriate or effective. It may be that it's not necessary, but we haven't really looked at it yet to know that. And so rather than committing ourselves to something, particularly a legislative act, that we don't know
We need.
is needed.
And so you consider it's binding enough that we're binding ourselves to consider it, and we're setting a time frame for doing that.
Right.
That makes sense.
And there was some commentary elsewhere that said there've been so few infill-style projects that you don't even know what would really help. So why commit to saying exactly what we're going to do until we know what will be helpful?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, H-1D, this is just grammar. It says the county shall amend the zoning code to reflect minimum density standards, et cetera. Should say amend the zoning code to reflect minimum density standards. Okay, my next one is on H-1I, which is the subject of one of Mr. Radish's suggested changes. And my only comment on that, I agree with his suggestions, except that I too question the limitation on the possible exclusion of the fire sprinkler requirement for homes less than 1,200 square feet. I'm willing to be educated as to why that's appropriate, but it's not apparent to me.
Well, I just jobbed that out of what was there. I was trying to make sense of the regulation that was there, or the implementation measure that was suggested. This is an evaluation of the feasibility of things, and I would, and since the way I have it is these items shall be considered, shall include but not be limited to the following. I'd say that the 1,200 square feet is up for grabs and part of that consideration. You know, we could rephrase it just possible exclusion of fire sprinkler requirement for certain homes or something like that, but we're not, this language would not limit us to only considering the 1,200 square feet. And since we're into this amendment, I'd like to discuss a little bit where I came from on this. When I first read this, I didn't know what it was talking about, and it sounded like from the title that we were going to be amending Title 25, which we can't do if it's a state statute. And then you get into it and it talks about Title 25, Article 8, without saying where that Title 25 is. So I assume that it's California Code of Regulations, Title 25, and the Article 8 I found was in Division 1, Chapter 1 of that title, so that's why I've added all that to it. And once you get there, well, then you realize Article 8 only deals with limited density owner-built rural housing. And so adding in a sentence about exempting manufactured homes from this requirement, which I assume was the sprinkler requirement, I don't think manufactured homes even come within Article 25, or Article 8 of Title 25. So I've left that out. It could be considered if they do. And then the last paragraph of this measure seems to be taking a much broader approach and saying, let's have a housing workshop to work on all the problems. And that doesn't fit within something that's limiting considerations to Title 25, Article 8. So I moved most of that language into a new implementation measure that you find on the second page of my handout, the housing workshop. Anyhow, that was what I went through to come up with what I'm suggesting. And I did add, as one of the things to evaluate under limited density owner-built rural housing, possible special provisions for homes and accessory structures being built by owners as replacement for homes and accessory buildings they lost due to a state or federal declared disaster. I think that's something that should be considered. It isn't, again, this isn't binding that once the county does evaluate it, it's going to come out with some special provisions such as that. But I think that's something that certainly should be considered. In that, you know, this provision would unfortunately look to the future, and that there may be other disasters in our future, and the same reasons would apply for making special provisions. Anyhow, I'm sorry to interrupt your flow of thought, but that's where I was going with my proposed amendment.
My flow of thought had already stopped
So,
with the 1,200 feet. I do think, though, that when that number's in there, it certainly suggests that is a limiting factor.
Yeah, I'd be happy if you have a suggestion to.
so let's talk philosophically about this. Let's hear from the other commissioners just generally about Title 25. And I can give a really brief explanation if people don't even know what we're talking about, which I think it could be likely. So Title 25 is a part of the state code regulations, which does allow for exemptions from certain building code requirements from the California Residential Code and from the Building Code. And they're included in there an assortment of items that could be addressed by it. It is only for limited density owner-built housing in general. And the reasoning behind it is because in rural locations, it may not be feasible to do. So sprinklers is one of the items that comes up. That's one of the things that comes up for owner builders, thinking that that's a big money thing to save money, but it's really there because you might not have enough water to be able to do that. And this allows for exemptions for as many plumbing fixtures as you would normally have in a home. For lots of things, you can actually have no plumbing in your house. You can use a well and a pump and bring water to the house. But you still have to provide sanitary facilities. You still have to have some minimum structural requirements. So it's a much more complex issue than whether it's 1,200 square feet or whether it's fire sprinklers. And I don't think we're going to solve that here today with the knowledge available to us or the number of people here. And just based on what I've heard from people, there's a lot of interest in this, particularly in the burn scar area. And I would agree with Tim that whatever we do should, if we're going to target this toward replacement structures from a disaster, we need to make sure it could be applied in other places. But that's not how it's been done in all of the other 10 jurisdictions in California that have done it. Sometimes it's just any rural housing, this is available to an owner builder. And in others, it looks like it started out to respond to a disaster and that it was a successful program and it became available to other people. So I just feel like maybe what we really need to say is we're going to have this workshop and that we're going to schedule it more promptly to try to understand what would really be helpful and what we could get buy-in for from, say, the building department, who will be quite interested in whatever we decide to do. But so philosophically, I would really like to see us look at this. I would specifically like to see us at least do it as a pilot program in the burn scar and any future disaster area for some period of years to see. And I think we should be looking at not just Title 25, but maybe there are other planning considerations that we would want to look at. Sort of the co-housing idea, because I know that that's an issue out there in the burn scar. People would like to be closer to one another on some of those larger parcels. So anyway, I think it's a really big issue that we need to get something in here that will allow us to move to the next step. And I'd like to see us put a timeline on what that next step might be, and instead of trying to figure out is 1,200 square feet the right number.
Let's do something other than the 1,200 square feet, but one of your comments was, let's look at other things other than Title 25. That's why I've split off the housing workshop into a separate implementation measure.
But I think that the housing workshop should be a limited density owner-built rural housing workshop, because if we make it a housing workshop for every incentive program and every other thing that we could do, it will be very hard to make any progress without some focus, I think. And I think the interest of the people out there is to do something quickly and at least give it a shot and see if it is helpful. See if we get something happening. Some people moved into permanent housing.
Well, if the housing workshop is going to be limited to limited density owner-built rural housing, well, then it should, that provision should go back into H1I. That was just not the way I was reading what was there before.
Right, I think there's two issues, so I like the direction you went. I just think it needs to be two things. One is the workshop should be the limited density or blah, blah, blah. But we should also look at 4 properties on which that might apply, that maybe they would actually have the opportunity to take advantage of some other planning waivers or creative development. So, and I don't know what the exact wording needs to be, but I think the thing is, how does the Planning Commission feel about the Title 25 piece all by itself? And then what do we think about disaster recovery areas and pilot programs?
I think pilot programs would be beneficial to expedite getting people back in, establishing, their housing instead of living in trailers and makeshift homes. At least with a pilot program, there would be some regulations, so they're not, some oversight, so they're not building lean-tos and they're unsafe but definitely need to do something to expedite this. I mean, I'm all for holding workshops and stuff, but what I hear that, I look at seeing delays for the Butte fire happened, 4 years ago? This is way too long. They should be built, houses should be built back onto their property now as we speak. And in many cases, it's not. It's stagnant. Their hands are tied with regulation and that kind of thing. I think a pilot program would be highly beneficial to everybody involved. And And what better place to do that in a disaster recovery zone? I'm all for that. I'm for the workshops as well, but I don't think that should hamper the progress. There's many victims out there that need.
So how would we come up with what the regulations or the policies would be for the disaster recovery zone? So we need to come up with a definition for where it applies, right? Whether it's a geographic or, I think that's where we would start. We have a recent disaster. And then, what exactly are the pieces of Title 25 that might apply right away?
The area I would think that would probably encompass everybody would be what usually the EOS determines what's a disaster area, or the governor that is usually larger than the actual affected area, slightly larger. So, I mean, that would be a good start. I think any place designated as for disaster relief or disaster area, I think that'd be a good start.
So I'm trying to break this into little pieces. So Kelly, would you be in favor of us designating a disaster recovery area and developing some kind of pilot program there?
I think that the county should. I don't think the planning commission sitting here is capable of doing that, or should try to do that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I was just wondering on this, if you take where it says the county shall evaluate the feasibility of amending the county's implementation of California Code of Regulations Title 25, up to the point.
You're on.
Mike's on.
I must have bumped my mic, I'm sorry. But take this up to the point where it says flexibility to meet the needs of residents, then go period. And then rather than going, we're looking at these as possible, then put in that we're going to have a workshop to look at these needs and put a date on that. So we can say, we need to get this done. And, I don't know how far out you want to push, but not too far, because it's obvious this needs to be considered. We need to look at this. So that's kind of my suggestion.
Well, I think I certainly would like to have in here that one of the things that should be considered should be possible special provisions for homes and accessory structures being built by owners as a replacement for homes, et cetera, et cetera. They lost to a state or federal declared disaster. So there's some guidance to this.
Right, so I think, so there's the two philosophical things. One is it for replacement structures, or is it for a geographic area that was impacted by the disaster?
Well, that's not, I think it's both. I mean, clearly. I mean, if we're dealing with disaster areas, we're dealing with structures lost due to a disaster. So there's no reason to take something out and without, you can also...
Well, they're two different things, because there's many parcels within the burn area that didn't have any recognized structure on it. It might have had a structure, but not one the county knew about.
But it's not a limitation. It's something to be considered.
I think that what should be in here is persons who own property within that, during the disaster, are the only ones this applies to. Not for some investor to come in off the street, swoop up a bunch of properties and say, well, I'm the owner operator, and get away from paying, following the general plan stuff. But
That's why
I think that a person who owned the property while the disaster happened, this is where this would apply. And I agree with Commissioner Wooster. I am not an expert on any of this by any means. I mean, I think the county does need to implement this. I mean, we can give them directions, but I wouldn't know where to start on
Right, which is
I
why we
think
need some kind of work.
we're sort of getting into the details of what
Yeah.
might be developed in the future, and I think that the policy should be relatively broad. I like Commissioner Fiorino's idea of just ending it at
Yep.
residents. We could add a line that the county shall consider establishing a pilot program within the Butte Fire area, and that can be determined when we develop the program to apply such measures. So I think by keeping the policy relatively broad, it allows us to look at a full range of things we may not even be thinking about today, but as we get into the details of coming up with this program, whatever it might be, that we say, oh, we didn't think about that, that's a good thing, let's add that, or no, we want to narrow it down because of, whatever issues might come up at that time, as we really delve into that level of detail.
So
But
I would agree. I think if we kept one broad policy statement saying that we're going to move toward doing this, and that we identify the possibility of the pilot program,
And
those
I-
are the two.
So, I'm sorry. And I wouldn't designate to the Butte Fire, because, what the future may hold, we don't know. It could be a different area, and I think...
Well, we're talking about establishing a pilot program.
Pilot program could be
Soon.
there.
Well,
For that.
I think that the policy, some of the other language that you had, H1J, talks about a potential for future disasters. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it could. We want to be prepared for that. We do have the disaster recovery ordinance that was adopted shortly after the Butte fire was amended not too long ago, that sort of starts along this.
Right,
there
which
is
allows
the-
temporary housing for longer
Right,
periods.
so we've already sort of addressed this to some degree, but it wouldn't hurt to go back and look at that and see what else could we do to help out folks in Los Angeles.
Well, in this general language, if we do it with the general language, I agree with Commissioner Henderson that we make it clear that we're trying to help people who themselves were injured by the disaster. And that's why I phrased it as replacement for homes and accessory buildings they lost due to a state or federal disaster. In stating a nice general policy for let's look at this problem, I think it's somewhere in there it needs to be indicated that we're trying to help the people who actually suffered the loss.
Well, I think this does that. And I think it's also broad enough to go much broader than that, because if we're going to be evaluating the feasibility of amending our implementation of these regulations, logically, it shouldn't be limited to just houses that need to be built to replace something that was lost. I mean, if it makes sense for those people not to have to comply with some of these state regulations, and the state allows an exemption, then it ought to go across the board. I do think that wording it the way Commissioner Laddish has done is good, because it does focus on the people who need the relief the most.
I agree.
But it's not limited to that.
Right.
And so I kind of like the way Mr. Laddish has done it. I would put the workshop back where it was originally, because
Yeah, that's fine.
that's where the focus ought to be, and we haven't got to H-1J yet, but that sort of complements this when we get to it. So I'm fine with what Commissioner Laddish has done with that one change, which is to put the workshop back where it was.
Yeah, and I think on the workshop language, you can say it. Additionally, the county will hold a housing workshop for Title 25 properties, or something like that.
Whatever those wording is, I want to say we want to get a pilot program going
Yep.
now.
And as far as the sprinkler system, you could say possible exclusion of the fire sprinkler requirement for appropriate homes.
I'd just take that out.
Take that
You know,
out and
I-
just leave it for
I'm
all.
with Commissioner Fiorino,
just
just
leave it
add it
out.
after the needs of the residents. Leave us as much leeway to come up with something that works for our specific situation.
Yeah, just like you said, that deals with a whole lot of different, not just sprinklers. So
Yeah.
Well,
why even mention it?
that's fine with me, but I like the second one.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
the
fine
second
with that.
one's
I don't know if this is actually two different things. One thing is evaluating the feasibility, and one thing is establishing a pilot program, because one is going to be a longer term, full-blown ordinance. Maybe that pilot program It's going to definitely be targeted to these specific folks.
Yeah, and I think it's another paragraph to this
That's
implementation
fine.
measure is.
Do you feel like you understand where we're headed with
I
this?
think so. So we're going to keep the Title 25 amendments relatively broad. Those issues will be discussed and resolved, when that comes up, not here in this policy, but, work out the nuance of that. We want to add a pilot program within this measure that essentially covers the Butte Fire area. That too can be defined when we come up with that program. We don't need to try to define it here.
Correct.
There is, it seems like there's consensus for the workshop to be a separate measure.
No, I think it's back in the,
Okay.
it's limited to limited density owner-built rural housing, but they might get additional benefits
Right.
other than Title 25.
I think it was right. It's attached to this
Okay.
issue, not to housing broadly. Can we get some dates on there? I mean, I would love to see a pilot program adopted before the end of this year. And I think if we don't give ourselves a date like that, there's so many other things going on, and planning staff already has enough to do, but it just won't happen. And it does seem like this is something that we could do that might make a difference quickly. How do the other commissioners feel?
I can't agree with you more. It needs to be, it's been 4 years now. Something needs to be done.
And the workshop provision can say we'll hold one or more housing workshops so you can get something off the ground quickly.
So I want to thank Commissioner Laddish for giving us actually wording to play with, and it gives us a good starting spot. So Peter, do you think you have that, and maybe we can move on and come back to that? Or do you feel like you have it right now and we can take care of it? And do you think it's possible to have a workshop and develop a pilot program before the end of the year?
It's possible. Is it feasible? The reality of the things that are on our plate right now, it really is going to depend on what the board sets as priorities for us. Certainly we could start working on that, whether it actually gets, it's not just me, and as you've noticed, the building department is really going to be the key.
Yes.
Maybe we've got a new building official, maybe not, I don't know yet.
Maybe we do, yes.
And so, I certainly can't commit another department to a course of action. We can certainly target for the end of this year, assuming this gets adopted, by the board next month sometime, essentially gives us, 4 months to do that.
Right.
That's light speed for government programs.
Yes, I understand. It's already August almost. How does everybody else feel about it?
Well, I think if you put in by the end of the year and the board thinks that's not feasible, they can change it.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Well, that takes care of one of my items. Back to Kelly's list.
Well, Mr. Laddish had suggested H-1J, which would be next in line, I think.
Okay, and my proposal for H-1J is modeled on the similar incentives for affordable housing under H-2, currently D. And in addition to considering special provisions for people in the burn area and other disaster areas with regard to building requirements, I don't see why we can't also give people who have the need an incentive to get into the building of the replacement projects by providing fee reductions, fee waivers, deferral payments, or installment payments. Now, if, unbeknownst to us, Ted Turner's out there with a bunch of acreage, why I don't think he would need the benefit of this, so that's why I added the second sentence, which kind of bollocks things up a bit. Amount of benefits allotted under this measure may be adjusted according to household income level and amount of insurance payments received. In other words, if a person has completely been reimbursed for the loss, why the county shouldn't bear the brunt of giving up fees. Anyhow, I open that for discussion.
Yes, sir. I agree your idea of it, but the second, I have heartburn with the second
Yeah, I do too.
sentence. I think if you're going to do it for one, you must do it for all, in all fairness. As you know, that if you get reimbursed by insurance, they're not going to reimburse you 100%, and then everything you accumulated in your possession, so
Well, and
you're
also,
something in a negative still, so I think it should be equal across the
yeah,
board.
I put in that second sentence as a matter of consideration.
You kind of knew that.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, it makes the administration extremely difficult. You're going to have to get income figures and everything else. But I put in there for discussion. That's the thought I woke up with this morning. That second sentence. I'd be happy to eliminate it.
Commissioner Fiorina, do you have a comment on that?
I kind of go both ways on it. I think, I think that, you know, there are people who, you know, financially are able to pay the fees. They don't need them to be waived, but again, how do you determine that? So I can go either way on it.
I would prefer to eliminate the second sentence. Administration-wise, I think it's difficult. And I think people should be not penalized because they had the foresight to buy insurance, or they maybe make more money than others. I'm not sure I'm prepared to commit the county to this providing of these fee reductions and fee waivers without somebody taking a look at it.
Well, when I put this in there, I assumed that we would need to have an ordinance or some similar regulation that is, because, I mean, that's, the key word in here is or, and/or building fees. You know, just how much the fee reductions might be, or the waivers, all the working parts of this would be yet to be accomplished, but it's committing the county to give some break to replacement projects. And again, Commissioner Henderson, it's for owners who lost structures.
So I think I agree with everybody in some piece of it. I think that we need to say the county shall develop a program for
like
fee
that.
reductions. And I'd like to get rid of that final sentence because I feel like that's a privacy issue. I don't think people should have to, that's just, you could never actually administer that, even though it's a nice thought.
Well, we're already administering to some degree the insurance component of it. You know, there's, I know that we are working with property owners and determining, you know, did they get, the insurance, and I'm trying to remember exactly how, this had to do with the cleanup of the site.
Right.
So the county covered, or the state covered the cost of cleanup of the site, but if the insurance company paid for that, then we made sure the insurance company paid for it and not the taxpayers. So
Right.
to some degree, we are doing that already. And so I think that's something that we certainly could incorporate into a program for fee waivers. That if it's covered by some other cost, you're right, the county
Right.
shouldn't be, letting
So-
the insurance company off the hook for it.
Exactly. It seems like if there's a way for you guys to do that reasonably, without looking at, did they get some money from PG&E and did this happen? I mean, if you just stick to, did your insurance cover the cost of new building permits? Well, then you shouldn't get your permit fees waived. Let the insurance pay for it.
Yeah, I like this without the last sentence, with your wording, because that answered kind of one of my concerns, going, you know, we're going to provide this, or this, or this, or that, which one is it? And you've answered that by putting, we'll develop a program, so I like it with that.
And that's fine for me.
I think that same phrase could apply to measure, I think it's H2D.
Yeah.
That Ms. Platt brought up. And I think that's the intent of this, is I don't have the authority to waive the fees, but I would work with the
Right.
board and other departments for a fee waiver program.
Yes. And maybe have a program instead of having, that each person need to come and,
Right, well, I mean,
Ask
the
people.
program would lay out how it works. It
Right.
could be an ordinance, it could be a resolution, it could
Right.
be, multiple steps. So is that a consensus on that issue? Strike the second sentence,
Strike the
add
sentence.
Strike
the phrase?
Add the phrase, develop a program for, and as I understand it, you're saying that there can be some consideration of what the insurance has provided when you develop that program.
Exactly.
Well, I would say that these are two different things. It's one thing to look to insurance if the county is going to be providing assistance to people for the very thing the insurance is there to cover. But these are different things. No insurance policy covers building fees. I mean, that doesn't happen. We're talking about fees that the county is entitled to collect, not money the county's putting out to pay for the results of a disaster that insurance may already be covering.
right.
It's a different thing. Okay. We're moving on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, H2F, this will be an easy one. Mobile/manufactured housing, the county shall amend the county code to remove the mobile home combining zone, MHP, and update manufactured home standards, comply with, should
Excuse me
be
a
to
second.
comply with.
Oh, there we are. I'm sorry, I got lost.
H-2F, put a 2 between standards and comply.
Yeah, we had a lot of little missing small words, right?
H-6C, PG&E Energy Conservation Programs and Workshops. There's just an error here. It says the county continue to partner. There should have been a shall in there that got struck. The county shall continue to partner would be correct. And H-6D, weatherization efforts, says, in an effort to assist homeowners, specifically senior and low-income households with property maintenance, and then it goes on. My only question there is, does the word specifically limit this?
Yeah.
Or are there others included? And probably a better word would be especially.
That's great.
And my last one on these implementation measures is H-7A. I think it's the second sentence, about two-thirds of the way down, it begins, in addition, responsibilities would include. The would should probably be will. And then it goes on, assisting with other housing-related activities, and investigate, the investigate should be investigating. That's it.
While you're on that one, I think the amendment was meant to commit the county to having a full-time housing coordinator, but what it ended up doing is committing the county to having a full-time staff person to be a housing coordinator, which could mean that that staff person is also a half-time animal control officer or other vital role for the county. I think we could just cure that problem by saying the county shall hire or designate a full-time housing coordinator. So it's clear that we're talking about the housing coordinator has no other
That doesn't
duty.
make any sense. To be a housing coordinator, then the sentence.
I didn't say to be.
Oh, you're just taking that
Just,
part
I'd say
out.
hire or designate a full-time housing coordinator.
Who will be responsible.
Who will be
Just
responsible,
taking out
yeah.
all that.
Right.
So I actually have questions about the housing coordinator as I read through this. I couldn't tell if the county wanted one or not. I mean, I see this here and that seemed yes, and I saw somewhere else where it was stricken out, and I'm,
Kristen Stranger, the Director of Health and Human Services, and I would love to have a full-time housing coordinator.
Yes,
I
I
know
bet you
you
would.
told me that.
Matter of budgeting and funding that position.
And I'm wondering whether this provision should have where that housing coordinator resides, yeah.
You know,
Because,
I don't think it matters, and in, other jurisdictions, it's sometimes in the planning department, sometimes it's in, Health and Human Services Agency. We share the responsibility for housing programs. And so there's a lot of coordination between our departments. It could be something that could be jointly funded by departments. We've discussed for several years, how that might work. I don't think it's necessary to put that.
To put it in here.
It could, when I supervised the housing program in El Dorado County, it jumped back and forth between different departments. It was mine for a while, went back over to housing, a different department. So it's just really going to sort of depend on circumstances.
well, maybe then at least the responsible department should list the planning department as one of those things. And then county administration, does that include the other agency that you were just referring to?
Housing or human resource.
Yeah, I'm really not sure why administration, other than they're going to have to sign off on creating the new position.
Well, if the person was in their department, yeah.
If this
And maybe
hap-
administration is not
Yeah.
necessarily the right
Okay,
department. It could be Health and Human Services
Yeah.
Agency and Planning Department.
yeah,
Listed on that.
that's what I would think. And once this happens, why then an awful lot of these responsible agencies would, entries would need to reflect where that person is, where the housing coordinator is as far as.
I know that this request for a housing coordinator has been in here for several rounds of housing elements. Are you hopeful?
I am actually.
Good.
I think we're probably as close as we've ever been to actually getting that position. It's not in this year's budget, but I think we'll be looking at a way to try to fund that for next year's budget.
I would think pressure from the state for us to actually meet that affordable housing goal should play into the importance of this position.
Yes.
Reinforce the need for it. Yes. Okay. Great.
Good.
Is that it, Kelly?
Yes. On this, on the element itself, as I
Well, I
said,
think-
I have quite a bit.
Well, I'm thinking about, I had a couple other very minor edits that I forgot to mention in my presentation. Going back to H3G, we had that pesky coordinate word in there. And I would suggest in the text of the, we'd say, will work with housing activity. Work, no, that doesn't make sense.
That does make sense.
I'm trying to think of the Latin.
We'll work with the Valley Mountain Regional Center as to housing activities and outreach.
Yeah.
I think it's clear your intention, it just needs a little
Right.
massaging.
Maybe we just move the housing activities and outreach to after the work with the Valley Mountain Regional Center. Somehow. I can play with that language
with
to make it
what you
make
want.
sense. Yeah. And then on 5D,
Yeah.
there is should not be an apostrophe under VHR. Or in VHR. It's not possessive, it's just plural.
Okay, B?
Oh, the
5D
second,
is a dog.
D, thank you.
the second VHR.
I missed that one.
Julie didn't.
While we're there, I'd suggest that the county, that it should read, the county shall conduct a study to analyze the impacts of vacation home rentals, VHR, on the quality of life, neighborhood character, and availability of permanent housing.
Yeah, I think that's,
That's what the second
The most-
sentence, but assess how the impact, wow, that sentence needs work too. Okay. I think very clear. Trying to be said.
Now, I have a feeling Commissioner Wooster has a few things to say about the first 120 pages.
Yeah, that's, go ahead.
Yes.
There's one other little edit there. Following 5HD on the next page, you have 5HC again.
Look at that.
Yeah.
ready? Okay. I think there's some shifting around the,
Yeah, I think the numbering will have to get looked at the end. Okay, now we're looking at the big document.
Yes. Well, should we just go through this? Mine is just page by page, and when other people have,
I was just gonna say, and everybody can jump in if they have, hopefully we'll cover everyone's.
yeah, okay, so we may as well start on, I think Peter spoke to this in his introductory remarks, but on page 2, the first bullet point under 4.2, it refers to analysis of population and employment trends and projections and quantification of Calaveras County's existing and projected housing needs for all income levels, including the county's share of the regional housing need. And this comes up later too on pages 59 and 60. And what I didn't find in here was an explanation of what's the region that's included and how is that housing need calculated. I mean,
Because everywhere else we read, it's the county minus Angels Camp. Yeah.
Yes. You know, suppose if you do this on some sort of regional basis, it's difficult for me to see how it's supposed to work, because maybe some people don't want to live here because of lack of jobs. They prefer to live someplace else. Maybe nothing needs to be changed, but it left me wondering how, if this is an important factor, and it seems like it is, how does it work?
But the state just gives us the number in the end.
The county's faced with a number that somebody else gives us.
Yes, that comes from this. They gave us the number. So
So we could
Maybe
certainly
we don't
clarify that the region in this case is Calaveras County and the city of Angels Camp.
Oh,
That's the region?
That's the region.
okay.
I
It's
think-
based on the...
that's a simple answer.
That's helpful.
On the regional planning agency boundary, which is, our regional planning agency is CalCog, and it's just the
Got
county
it.
and the incorporated city within the
That
county.
makes sense.
So I can add that sentence, their explanation in there.
Right.
Great. Yes.
Okay, on page 3, the fourth bullet point down is writing about analysis of any special housing needs, and it goes on and says families with female heads of household. And I kind of wondered about that. Why is it limited to female heads of household? And I suspect that's something that comes from the state.
Yeah, there was a description of that, how the female heads of household tend to be more challenged financially to pay for their housing.
Okay, the next one is on page 7. The last bullet point is just a typo, I think. County response, while the county has capacity to meet its RHNA, and it goes period, capacity is not reserved, should be a comma after RHNA, and then capacity should not have an initial cap. On page 12, there's a discussion. Anybody have anything earlier?
No, that's fine.
Okay, table 4-5, there's a lead-in explanation to table 4-5 that says the median household income in Calaveras appears to be increasing in recent years. When I look at table 4-5, it has 2010 and 2016, and it looks like the median household income went down between 2010 and 2016. So it looks to me like there's a disconnect between the description of the trend of median household income and what the table shows.
Yeah, I was assuming that if they had from 2005 to 2016, well, there would be generally an upward trend, but you're right, the table doesn't support what the statement says.
I think it should be the increase, the family incomes where the increase takes place.
Yeah, the median family income is increasing, so maybe the word income, where it says the median household income in Calaveras appears to be increasing, should be the family income. But I don't know what was meant here, so I don't know really how to fix it.
Hard to correct when you don't know what it meant.
Maybe it just should say median income, because that's what the table is titled as.
Yeah, it's interesting going back to the 2015, which had 2013 data in there. The median household income was $55,295. So So it did increase, but then it appears to have dropped in
Yeah.
2016, which is the most recent
I
data.
think that text is probably left over from the 2015 version.
It's not, though. That's
No.
what I'm checking to see.
That's strange.
Oh, that's just leftover text that we
Yeah.
didn't edit. I think that probably,
Why not just take out appears to be increasing in recent years?
I thought I saw
But-
somewhere else in here in some background information that it took a dive at 2008, went down, came, and then came back up, but still not at the rate that other places were, so I'm not.
Why don't
And
we-
it seemed like there were some numbers that were newer than this someplace for some items.
Anyhow, we could certainly say the median household income in Calaveras continues to remain lower than the median household income for California and avoid the problem.
yeah, I think if we just strike that it appears to be increasing in recent
Yeah.
years,
Right.
but I don't think this text is critical to the overall
Yeah.
program, so.
Yeah. Bottom line is we see how we compare.
Okay, page 14, table 4-7. If you go down to the Calaveras lumber, we have spelled Angels Camp, so it reads Angles Camp.
Yeah, you might need to do a search for that. I found it in several places. It's a one I do a lot when I'm typing, so.
That's an old friend.
Yeah, it's an easy one.
And then dropping down, we have a Jerry Lind Elementary School.
Yeah.
Okay.
CAL FIRE needs its closing parentheses if you're going to put it in.
And my next one is on page 24. Where it says housing units. Up the top, it says table 4-17 shows the total housing stock in Calaveras County in California in 2000 and 2010. And when I go down to table 4-17, it's showing the housing stock in 2010 and 2018. So I'm assuming the description in the text above is incorrect.
That should be correct.
I have nothing else until I get to page 42. And there's a section that's headed Affordable Housing by Income/Occupation. And the third sentence down reads, with a median sale price of $328,400 for resale single-family homes in Calaveras County in 2018, many but not all of the households shown in the table are priced out of the market. And then there's a table below that shows affordable house prices for various categories of people. But what puzzling me is the median sale price of $328,400. If I understand it, that is the midpoint sale price, which means that half the houses are priced above it and half the houses are priced below it. So I'm not getting how many, but not all, are priced out of the market. The implication is that this is a big problem. But I'm not seeing it as a big problem because people can buy below the median.
Well, and there's quite a few of these that are.
It would make more sense, I think, from your point of view, is if we had the mean, the average sales price, because that would give an idea of what's...
Well, to me, the whole sentence is kind of questionable, because when you say that people are priced out of the market, that's basically saying they can't afford anything on the market. And I don't get there from the median sale price.
So using those figures as sort of the standard practice for identifying, housing price without going into the level of detail that would really be necessary to see how many people, how many houses of a certain price are available to the number of workers that make this level of salary. Maybe it's, the information is valuable, but maybe that sort of summary statement, we could just strike that portion of that statement or that one sentence.
I would strike that sentence, because I think it overstates the problem. The numbers seem fine. I don't have any quarrel with the numbers. They are what they are. And people can draw their own conclusions about what follows from that. But to say that many people are priced out of the market based on the median sale prices, I think not correct.
It would be useful to see what the high and low numbers were, just out of curiosity. If the lowest number is only 100,000 below that, then you're gonna see that there's still a lot of people that can't even afford that. That's what we need to know, is there's people that can't even afford the lowest price thing available. So for our purposes here, we could maybe just say, get rid of that sentence, but I think that the point is there are a lot of people who are priced out of the market. I think that's true.
And I would agree with you on that. I'm just not sure that this table necessarily explains
Represents
that.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if we could maybe find that information and add a sentence that does show us. And where is the data that shows us that? Or maybe we're wrong.
No, I don't know what the answer is there.
So I think it's pretty much common knowledge that,
How much you just change the order to May?
Yeah. Well, I think
that,
there's a lot.
the housing prices exceed that which a lot of working people can afford. And I think that's what we're trying to show here. You can find housing that's less expensive, it's below the median, but how many of that compared to the numbers of people working at that salary range?
There were some additional tables in here that showed like two people making at minimum wage jobs couldn't afford it. I think the information is here, it's just not in this particular table.
Well, I agree that would be good to know, but I can't get it out of this.
Yeah, I agree.
I just noticed on table 427, the median residential sale price is $328,000, not $328,400. Let me double check and see what is the correct number.
Well, if
Which
we're
is why
getting-
I was concerned that if we strike that sentence entirely, that piece of information is not available. But
Yeah.
it is,
No, you need to keep that.
as long as it's correct. But otherwise, the consensus, that sentence maybe just should be struck, because it reaches a conclusion that we really don't have the data to support it.
Correct. Or that data doesn't support it, put it that way. My next one is on 44. It's the very last paragraph. It's speaking about seniors who may have to rely on alternative forms of transportation such as bus, rail, ride sharing, and walking. I don't think we have any rail in this county. 54 is my next one, and this is a question, really. Under the homeless persons section near the bottom of the page, dealing with the homeless, it says, "Some are just passing through Calaveras County while others are long-term residents." And my question is there any data or estimates of how many homeless persons in the county are long-term residents versus people who are passing through who are just moved here? Because it seems to me that that information may be helpful in trying to figure out what to do about the problem.
If you don't mind, I happen to volunteer for the pit count this year and the point in time count of the homeless, and I know some of the questions on that survey that we had to have homeless people fill out involved whether or not how long they had been in the county as opposed to just passing through. So I think Health and Human Services has that data available.
I think it would be helpful to include it if we have it.
And just put it in the text there.
Just add a sentence or two that identifies what those numbers are based on the 2018 point in time count.
I actually had a question about the section above that talks about farm worker housing. But then it goes on and mostly talks about logging camps and kind of short-term housing. And I did a little search in Unicode for farm worker housing, and which we don't call it that, we call it agricultural employee housing. But I couldn't really find any information about what's allowed. Exactly, can that be permanent housing? And I'm starting to hear from my clients about, I'm on ag land, I can build farm worker housing and that won't count toward my density, and which I understand is correct. However, I'm wondering how that's managed so that it doesn't become something else, or I see it becoming vacation housing.
Right. So there is state law that allows for agricultural employee housing to be constructed, and it's relatively loose in its requirements. We try to ensure, we haven't had any proposals since I've been here for construction of agricultural employee housing, but we would do what we could within the constraints of state law to document that there actually was an agricultural activity going on that housing would apply to. And if we were to find that it was converted to something else, that would be a problem.
Or if it's only being used part of the year, though, it could be used the other part of the year if it's not necessary. I mean, once just sit empty. I was just curious, because I'm not aware of any either,
Yeah.
and I don't really know how it's managed.
So this, again, sort of comes out of state law. We have to address farm worker housing, and it's, particularly a problem in the larger agricultural counties where you have, the row crops and lots of employees, for a large swath of the county. We have vineyards, we have, some logging camps, we have some other, orchards, with seasonal employees that come in. And so it's not a necessary in the county, but it's not a critical need that you have in other jurisdictions. That will be something that we will be addressing with an update to the zoning code in the near future.
Right, that's what
But it's a touchy situation because of the state law requirements that we have to allow it, and the relatively loose standards that are set forth in state law. and how it can be abused.
I foresee people thinking that this might be something that they could leverage. Not that it might be agricultural
Yeah.
employee housing, but that they would leverage it at other times or do other things with it. Anyway, enough of that.
So this last sentence in the homeless persons says, or female heads of household may, due to domestic violence, kind of maybe needs another become homeless, or,
And it could be, or homelessness of female heads of
Yeah.
household
just,
may be due.
try not to fixate on little. Okay, Kelly, what's next?
Page 56, these are just typos or grammar. Under homeless services, near the top of the page, the very first sentence says, as of spring 2019, Calaveras County was in the process of developing 2 temporary homelessness shelter.
Yeah, homeless shelters.
Should be plural. And then the next paragraph, second sentence, the county plans to shelter a minimum of 9 individuals on a temporary basis, but, comma, up to 6 months. It should be 4 up to 6 months with no comma.
Do you know what that was, if they successfully did that this?
So the board on Tuesday approved the go-ahead for development of shelter here in San Andreas, on county-owned property over between the library and the portables over there. It's still in the initial planning stages. We're also working with the Blue Mountain Youth and Family Coalition, I think it's called, to look at a site. It requires a zoning amendment, which we're working on right now. So those 2 programs are in progress still.
I was wondering about the church site in Arnold.
That fell through.
Yeah, it's too bad because there's people hanging out there.
Yeah. And these are pilot programs that, hopefully if it worked, we might be able to extend elsewhere if we can find an appropriate location.
Okay. Page 61, third full paragraph, just a typo. Second sentence of that paragraph begins, because of this, until further data is available, the county is crediting ADUs towards meetings, a portion of the above moderate income housing need. Meetings should be meeting, singular.
And towards shouldn't have an S on it.
What was that?
The toward, I mean, it's kind of funky to have an S on towards.
Are we on page 62? Is that
61.
Right?
61.
61, got it. Thank you.
Just someone got happy with S's. Just wants that
Yeah,
extra
right.
S.
Page 64, top bullet point, which is labeled infrastructure. The last sentence refers to the 2014 draft general plan update, etc. That would seem to be outdated, as it were. And we're speaking of the draft at this point, so why wouldn't it be the 2019?
It would be. I think that was something that was carried over from the 2015 version.
Okay, page 65, the section that begins underused sites. There are 2 sentences there, they should be 1. Although there are underutilized sites available in the county suitable to accommodate housing, period. It begins a new sentence, the county is not relying, etc. Should be combined with a comma. I make it all the way to page 73, under Mental Health Services Act. Oh, the last sentence is speaking about funding to expand community mental health services through 6 different components, community planning, community services, and supports, should be support, singular. And then page 77 to 78, and this is more of a comment about why we are doing something. This has to do with the potential conversion of the Sierra Meadows Apartments, 35 units. And page 77, just above table 4-4, it says, however, Sierra Meadows Apartments loan is not set to mature until 2039, making this a low risk of conversion. But then it goes on for the rest of that page and a whole nother page, analyzing the replacement costs if there is a conversion and so forth. And so it wasn't clear to me why, well, not clear to me why the fact that the loan is not set to mature until 2039 necessarily makes this a low risk in conversion. But if it does, why are we spending so much time analyzing the cost if it does? I mean, there could be a very adequate explanation for this, but it didn't leap out at me.
Well, and also in table 4-44, at the bottom, the entry for Sierra Meadows shows that the expiration date is 2018 and the risk assessment is very high.
Yeah, which is why they analyzed it, but,
Well,
yeah, I wondered about the loan date too, like the loan from who? Is it from a state agency? Is that why they don't think?
Well, I think it's once these loans are paid off, then there's little incentive for the owner to continue, if the subsidy ends. And
Well, once it's no longer deed restricted, they can charge more, so
Yeah.
I don't think the loan date has anything to do with it, actually. If in 2018...
Well, the loan date would be the time frame in which those restrictions would apply.
Well, then what does the 2018 mean?
Yeah.
They're saying that it expires in 2018.
This looks
So
inconsistent.
That's what I didn't understand.
There seems to be an inconsistency.
Yeah, and it seems like the 2039 or whatever it was would have been an awfully long loan date, but those are pretty old apartments.
So usually when there are state or federal loan programs that developers will use to help subsidize the cost of construction, they're required to maintain a certain level of rents to accommodate, whatever the affordable housing sector is that they're shooting for a certain period of time. Typically, it's 55
Like
years.
30 years or...
30 years or 50
Yeah.
years or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's a long time.
So if this was built in '88, and if it was a 30-year program, 2018 would be. I'm not sure how the funding expiration date and the loan date interact. Obviously, the consultants that put this together understand that one much better than I, and unfortunately, they're not here. And so I can't answer that question. It may be that we just want to rephrase that sentence. I mean, I can go back and look at that and see if there's something that we're missing here, but I'm sure there's some connection between the fact that even though the expiration date for funding expired last year, the loan agreement links it to, the
Or
2039.
could they have gotten additional funding that then committed them to
Exactly.
continuing
Yeah.
that, which is what I'm kind of thinking. 'Cause
That's what I'm thinking too, but it
2018,
doesn't really
already
say
happened.
that. The thing that making this a low risk of conversion, maybe if you want to just add the word immediately, or we strike that last phrase and just make it a statement, Sierra Meadows Apartments loan is not set to mature until 2039, period.
I mean, footnote A is trying to explain this whole problem. It's just that it doesn't succeed.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me if you have a low risk of conversion, but then you have a risk assessment being very high, that seems inconsistent.
Exactly.
I think
And that's-
that it's because it says expiration date for funding, but it says the low-income housing tax credit is expiring in 2018, not their commitment necessarily, if their funding committed them to a longer period. I think that's probably what the explanation is.
But then why is the risk assessment very high? That's what I'm
Yeah,
not...
I know.
Or low risk of conversion. I mean, I assume we're talking about the risk of the same thing.
Yeah.
Conversion to non,
Well, and
Affordable housing.
maybe 2018 is when their tax credit expired, but it's not the expiration date for their funding, which we know is 2039. So maybe the title of that column isn't entirely accurate. Or maybe it refers to all different kinds of financial incentives.
I'd be perfectly happy if you want to consult with a consultant and make this sensible.
sense.
Okay.
I don't think, we can't do it today,
Yes,
but
I agree.
I endorse whatever you come up with.
Yeah, I think we just want the correct recitation of what the facts are, no matter what they are.
Yeah, and apparent consistency.
Yes.
It would be a very terrible thing for that community to lose that housing.
And I think that's the bottom line of what we're trying to get at here, is that this could be converted. That's, the whole issue of at-risk units that we're required to analyze in this element under state law. What would be the ramifications if that were to occur? And this is, one of the few that, is at risk, so.
Okay, my next item is really just a question, and that is from pages 79 through 89. There's a lot of information here on potential housing constraints, and much of the information there is keyed to the 1996 general plan. And hopefully we will be adopting a new general plan in the relatively near future. And I guess the question is this the way we have to do this because the 1996 general plan is the one now in effect? And if this is how we have to do it, then we're on an 8-year cycle, and this looks like it's going to be outdated soon after it's put together. And my question is this a problem? And if so, what can we do about it?
I had the same question are we running out of time on adopting the housing element, or would it make sense to wait until the general plan is adopted, update this, and adopt it?
I've struggled with the same timing issue. It would make sense to update this, depending on when the board takes this up. This could be between the time that the board, hopefully by next Wednesday, with the direction from the board, and we'll be working on the final findings for adoption later in the month, which would be about the same time that this would come back. And we would have for the first time a complete general plan with a housing element that's consistent with the rest of it. So it may be appropriate to qualify this discussion with some mention of the timing and the fact that it is undergoing an update. And maybe we just hold off. It's close to the time constraints. We have I think it has to be adopted by October, and any changes we have to send back to HCD for them to look at those changes. I don't remember the exact date, 120 days from sometime in late June, so June 28th or something like that was so whenever that 120 days ends, yeah, I think it would be sometime in October, mid to late October. So we do have some time, and it may be appropriate to defer final adoption of this until after the rest of the general plan is adopted, and then we can update this text.
A lot of it is zoning, which isn't going to change because it's going to take us
Right.
a couple of years to get the zoning together, I would imagine, based on past experience. So it's not a whole lot that would need to be updated.
I think it's just pretty much these two pages, 79 and 80. The rest is all, like you say, zoning.
So how does Planning Commission feel about that? Would we be more comfortable updating this and making it consistent with the general plan?
Absolutely. I would.
I think so.
Yeah, unless we run into a deadline, we just have to get it out.
Well, that would also
Way it
give
is.
us a chance to see all these things corrected, or we can,
Also, there's a couple little grammar things at the bottom, 79 there, second sentence. The Cs seem to be separated from the words. In county, community, and centers.
79.
79, second sentence. Yeah, there's a couple spaces that doesn't need to be.
Oh, down at the bottom of the page under
Yeah.
general plan use
Yeah, I'm
designations.
sorry, yes.
Yeah, we kept hitting the space bar.
Yeah, there's some,
Oh.
community plan.
Yeah, it happens 3 times.
That C is such a tricky one.
Okay, I'm up to page 91.
Well, I have something on 90.
So did I. You go
Okay.
first.
I didn't understand on talking about manufactured homes and mobile home park. It says, except, this is the first paragraph under manufactured homes on lots. Except for architectural requirements, the jurisdiction is only allowed to subject the manufactured home and the lot on which it is placed to the same development standards to which a conventional single-family residential dwelling on the same lot would be subject. The architectural requirements are limited to roof overhang, roofing material, and siding material. Then it goes into exceptions. And what I couldn't understand was what limitations can be placed on manufactured housing when it is placed in a historical area with design review, but that is not on the National Register of Historic Places, because it looks as if you can only subject it to design review if the site is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It was just unclear to me.
You've
Was
got
that
it.
where you were on that?
That's what I read also.
That is what the state law says, that you cannot control the placement of mobile homes on a single-family lot, other than if you have generalized architectural standards that talk about, roofing, overhanging material, roof material, that kind of stuff, except if it is a federally registered historic, what's the terminology?
listed on the
historic
National
places.
Register.
So if we have a local
Yeah.
historic designation, that doesn't count.
That doesn't count. You just plop it down there.
The manufactured home lobby has been very successful in the state legislature in making sure that local jurisdictions, it used to be that counties would say you can only put a mobile home in these areas. And that was changed back in the 80s. They said, no, you can't restrict manufactured homes that way. Manufactured homes have to be treated the same as a stick-built home as far as zoning is required, except for federally listed places.
Well, thank you. That's not what I wanted to hear. but-
Yeah, it's a whole part of that affordability.
Okay, page 91, the very bottom of the page. It says, in addition, the 1996 Calaveras County General Plan states that roads with a width of less than 18 feet are generally considered to be operating at a level of service F, which, if I understand it, is a very poor level of service.
Yeah.
But why is this necessary? And it's a little misleading, because you could have a road with a less than 18-foot wide that travels so seldom, and it's, in terms of the ability to travel it in an efficient way, it's perfectly fine. And this particular provision, I don't think, got carried over to the current revision
No,
of
I
the
don't
general
think it did.
plan. And so therefore, I don't think it's particularly helpful, and unless we need it, I would suggest we just take it out.
I'd be for that.
I would agree that I don't see that as being necessary.
Also on that page, all of the building code information is incorrect because we're in California. So every single one of them should say the California whatever code.
Oh, instead of uniform.
Yep, no uniform, no national electrical. And you might just do searches for that because it occurs throughout the document.
I remember when I was doing testing and working with building codes, generally, if you say California building code, you're really covering.
You have to say the
UBC because-
California Building Standards Code to
Yeah.
cover them all.
Because it's generally the same as the UBC, except with California additions.
Yeah, except
So,
that it's
yeah,
not
so we
that way
wanna-
anymore. I mean, it's just California. It's not even a uniform building code anymore. I mean, they're, you
now
could say the
California.
California Building Standards Codes because we also have that green code now, which is in addition to things that are
They've added
listed
to
here. And it's probably not important that we list every single one. We also have a residential code adopted here, the California
Is there a
Residential
simple
Code.
sentence we could use to replace that, where it lists all the different codes?
Just the California Building Standards Codes.
So the Calaveras County Building Department enforces the California Building Standards Code, all of which have
Codes,
been
yep.
adopted in whole or part by the board.
Mm-hmm. The reality is, for most single-family homes, it is the residential code. But
Okay, my next one is on page 95. It's just a typo in the bottom paragraph, second sentence. If conditions of approval such as encroachment permits or environmental mitigation required as a condition of project approval, et cetera, should be an R between mitigation and required.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, makes sense.
Above that, on the top of page 85, the last sentence of the first paragraph, although there is no official policy in place, applications for affordable housing projects or projects with an affordable housing component are expedited to the extent feasible. Why don't we have a measure in here that makes that an official policy?
I think that we do.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
So are we still on page 95? Did you get
Yeah,
back to
the
something?
top of 95.
Right. Right.
Well, actually, policy H-2.1 says give priority for permit processing to development projects that include an affordable residential component, so we're,
I remember seeing it in there somewhere.
yeah, so, I don't know if you want to, just as for information, saying, see proposed policy H-2.1. After you add the period at the end of, after feasible.
So I would rephrase this sentence.
Fine.
That pursuant to policy H.2-1, because it is a current policy,
Oh, it is.
applications for rural housing
Oh, okay.
are expedited.
Right.
Okay, great. You solved that problem quickly.
So item 5, under single-family residential, should, the same thing, should the building department reviews construction drawings for consistency with the California building standards codes?
I'm sorry, where was that? I was writing number 5 under single family.
Yeah, just replace uniform building code with California building standards codes. So I'm wondering why on multifamily residential, you don't, the building department doesn't appear to review the plans there. It's just, I don't know if these are supposed to be things that are in addition to the above list.
No, we probably would be good to plug in the same line, number 5, under single family after number 3. So that becomes number 4, and then number 5 is issuance of permits.
And then if we look at the very last paragraph, the next to last sentence says, upon completion, the permit can be submitted to the county. I think maybe they want to say upon completion, the permit document? I don't know what they're trying to get at here.
It's really the building permit application.
Yeah, it looks like that's what's happening.
At the end of the next sentence, you probably want to put application also. Submittal of a building permit.
Yeah. You see the issue. We wish we could just submit our permits to the county. Here's my permit, could you sign it?
Okay.
Okay, page 99.
Well, got a 96. Page 96, there's a, under variance, and then number 2, subparagraph 2, it says, within 120 calendar days of receipt of a completed application for the following
Yeah.
period. I don't know if you need for the following at all.
Yeah.
Under that variance in that chapter, you have the word "and" with spaces in it. Needs to take the spaces out. The last sentence over here.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The word "and" has spaces in it on the last sentence under variance. That paragraph, first paragraph.
It's not, you're not worried about parking spaces, you're worried about typing spaces.
Yeah, typing
You know,
spaces, not parking
sometimes Word
spaces.
does,
Your space bar was stuck, I
Word as a
think.
program, and it does that, and I can't figure out why.
Figure out
it says
why.
that.
It does
There
it
was another-
when you're aligning both sides and you have a short piece. It's because it makes an attempt.
But sometimes we'll just pick up one word and do that.
Yeah.
It's just messing with you.
Very successful job at doing that.
Okay, page 99, table 4-54. It has 3 footnotes, A, D as in Delta, and C, and I can't figure out why the D isn't a B as in Bravo.
And can you see where footnote B,
And there is a footnote B over on,
Well, there's a footnote D, all right, right under the table.
Yeah.
but there's also the reference to a B at the end of the 13,000, but there's no footnote to it.
yeah.
I see that there were 4, somehow when we updated this table, the numbering got mixed up, so I can correct that. Try to figure out exactly what that's referring to. I think that should have just been deleted. I don't know why that's there, because it wasn't referenced in the table in 2016. And it certainly doesn't, there's nothing that reflects what it is, so I think that was just deleted. So that should just be gone, that footnote B, that doesn't have an explanation.
Oh, it isn't what's listed as footnote D.
Well, there is no
Well,
there is a B on where it says tenant subdivision map, 13,682 to 14,000.
yeah.
But there's no explanation of what that is.
Well, I thought
Simply,
maybe,
that's the application fee. So that just should be gone. We can fix the numbering so it goes ABC rather than ABC.
yeah, yeah, great.
Trying to keep everyone on their toes. Yeah, dancing back and forth between the others.
So I have one other thing on page 95, before we go on, in that it doesn't talk about public works at all, on either of them, really. And public works can become, by far, the longest piece of your time frame, Wayne. As he smiles. You know, the grading permits, encroachment permits, especially if you're dealing with Caltrans also. Stormwater prevention plans, it's just, there's So maybe it just needs a number in each spot.
And is that required for residential development as well?
Depends what, if you need an encroachment, or if you're doing any grading at all. And if you're over an acre, you have stormwater issues. We have them anyway, but they don't actually review them unless you have a larger parcel.
So what are those two lists of steps? Add the
Just add public
requirements.
works into them. And possibly Caltrans. I mean, if you really want to extend your project time a little. And then, I mean, there's a whole ton of other things, but they would all be coordinated through you anyway, like fish and game, whatever they're called now.
Yeah, this is one of those things where we could make the document as
Yeah.
describe the process as thick as the rest of it.
The point is
We're
you're going
trying
to
just
planning, they're
highlight
going to tell
key
you.
points.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a question, are we going to break for lunch, or should I eat my power bar?
We'll break for lunch. How much more have you?
Very little, I have very little.
So let's finish Kelly's list, and then we'll come back and work through everybody else's.
Well, we're interjecting when Kelly gets to a certain page, so.
Right.
Okay.
So there'll only be a few things left.
Well, I have some suggestions on the measures that have not been
We'll
done.
do those after lunch.
Okay.
We'll get through Kelly's
Great.
easy items.
This more of a question on pages 100 and 101. Table 5-56 is headed typical fees associated with residential development. And for example, the sewer fee is $12,644.
Mine's blank.
And that's, by the footnote, that's CPUD, and it says it should be noted that fees vary widely from district to district. CCWD covers homes within the county and has a higher one-inch meter connection fee of $29,000 and so forth. And it occurs to me that if these fees do vary widely, that explanation should be in the text and not in the footnote, and the word typical bothers me when it's associated with something like this, when the fees do vary so widely. Actually,
Maybe
that's
we ought
the,
to start off by, well, first, number one, the table should be labeled 4-56, but on both page 100 and 101. But maybe the provision, the paragraph introducing it on page 100, if you could say table 4-56 shows examples of fees, and then say various districts, or the fees can vary greatly between the districts or something like that.
I mean, I don't doubt the data, it's just the way it's presented.
Yes.
It exudes an appearance of typicality that apparently is not there.
And this is one of those things that we struggle with the mandates of state law. They say we have to do this, and it just doesn't really fit because of the wide number of special districts we have. If we're in the city, and the city provides sewer and water, there's a fee for it. But every district has its own fee, so it makes it much more challenging. I like the suggestion of Commissioner Laddish of example of the fees, and then adding that note. D, I guess it is.
That's some pretty cheap water.
Is that acceptable to the rest
Yes.
of the commission?
Yes.
That we
Yes.
modify that first sentence and then add note D as a sentence after that?
Yes. Okay, my next one is page 104, and that's just a typo. Near the top of the page, there's A, B, C, D, and E. Under E, it says conditions or project approval, et cetera. It should be conditions on project approval
Or of.
or of.
I'm sorry. Oh, there's one D.
I'm up to page 109.
I just have a question on 108. It just seems remarkable to me that median cost per acre for residential lots under 1 acre is $131,627. I mean, the property I bought in the last 10 years is in Sheep Ranch, which might make a difference, but this just seems like a remarkably high figure. I'm questioning the sample, I guess.
Well, I look at Murphy's and that number seems remarkably low because,
Well,
you know, less than quarter acre lots are selling for that.
Okay.
So-
Well, that's the real world. Thank you.
Well, you look at some of the higher end lots, and, you know, the Saddle Creek, for example, is much, much higher. So this is the median, and this is
Yeah.
where we get into that averaging, you know.
Yeah, it's that same
sort
thing.
of
You can buy
really
something for
skews
20.
things a lot when you've got such a huge difference in
Right.
communities.
Okay.
And I think Murphy's numbers always get really thrown by Forest Meadows, which is in the Murphy zip code, and pushes everything down.
Okay, excuse me.
My next one is on page 109, and there may be an inconsistency here. Under construction costs, it says the average cost for a newly constructed 3,500 square foot single-family home, not including land in the Calaveras County region, would cost around $286,541. And then below that, there's a table that estimates a 1,400 square foot single-family home on 1/3 of an acre. Total estimated development costs in 4-59 of $286,000. And so what I'm wondering is whether the reference above to 3,500 square foot is correct, or whether it should be 1,400, but I don't know.
Yeah, so I have it marked also. So, and also, who's constructing? Are we talking about the cost a developer is paying when he's built, like 40 of them, or the cost that a homeowner is paying when they contract with a general contractor? But you aren't going to be building that 3,500 square foot home for that price.
Well, yes, that's like $82 a square foot, and probably the average, from what I can understand, is more like 200 at least.
It's pushing 3 for most custom homes, but it certainly a developer could build for here in the valley for considerably less, but here for maybe 100 plus, you know, up depending on the house. And somebody could build something for $200 a square foot, being really, really careful, if they're paying a contractor, you know. So I just think it needs to explain who we're talking about and check if the 3,500 was really intended to be 1,400.
Now I'm into the tables or the, table 4-60, page 114. At the top of the page under evaluation, this is table 4-60, page 114. It says no applications were filled. Filled should probably be filed. And then under H-1H, it looks like the proposal here is to delete H-1H. And it's not clear to me why the county would be proposing to delete that as opposed to a number of others which the county is proposing to continue. I just don't know the answer, I just raised the question. I mean, it looks like we're planning to go ahead and do it, so I don't know why we would delete it.
I think what we're saying here is that we don't actually utilize this design permit provision in our code, and rather than have a specific policy that says let's fix it, that we're going to have a broader, comprehensive update of the zoning code, and so having this specific provision here is unnecessary. To some degree, we've already done this as well with the amendment to the McCollum Hill design review process. So maybe it's more appropriate to say that we have implemented this in part, and and we'll be addressing design criteria through the zoning ordinance update as is suggested by the general plan, because we had the provision in the general plan as well said that this could apply to other communities in the future if the communities wanted to develop design guidelines.
Yeah, through the community plans.
Right.
So.
Okay.
I thought that's why it was being deleted too, is that we were just changing the whole way we do that. Commissioner Ladd is just getting hungry.
No, I've eaten my builder's bar, I can.
My last one is H-1I, in the column that says continue, modified, or delete. It says continue now includes program H-2F, and should that not be H-1H?
Yes, I would agree.
And that's all I have.
Well, if we want to wrap up the pre-programmed stuff, I've got a few things that, there's no real reason why we can have lunch and come back and
I have
take
a
a
few
break.
too, and I'm sure everybody.
Yeah, so let's just leave it.
Take a break.
Now, a good time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good, Jenny.
How much time do we need? An hour? Okay. Okay, let's take a break for an hour. And we'll be back here at 1:15.